The Five Nights at Freddy's drought is finally over. We have news about a new FNAF game. I'm not exaggerating, I don't want to waste any time on it, let's get right into it. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. Hyperbole aside, I do want to be clear that we're not in a FNAF drought. Secret of the Mimic was less than a year ago, and the FNAF 2 movie was like 2 months ago. What I mean to say is that we're in a drought of FNAF news. Besides one graphic novel adaptation of a Tales from the Pizzaplex book, we have nothing on the horizon to look forward to. So some people are getting a little antsy, but worry no longer. On Dawko's recent charity livestream, Scott Cawthon himself popped in and said a few messages. Now granted, there was nothing earth-shattering, but there was one bit of admittedly small but very important news that he shared. To quote directly, "There is a sequel to something being worked on, by the way. Not a 3. A 2. And I get it, like on the surface, this is just nice to know that they are working on something, and it's not much to directly go off of, but the wording he uses here is very deliberate. A sequel's being worked on, not a 3, a 2. With just that, we can get a pretty good idea of what this game might be. Before we get too deep into the whole 2 versus 3 thing, I think the fact that we're talking about a sequel at all helps to figure out more about when the game is taking place within the timeline. And that's because we're in the middle of the rising action section of the Mimic's storyline. What I mean by that is that stories typically go from exposition to rising action to climax to falling action to resolution. In other words, the story establishes itself, introduces its character and its problems, has all those problems come to a head, has the falling out from those problems, and then wraps up loose ends. Clearly, we're in the Mimic story arc of Five Nights at Freddy's. We have been since Help Wanted, even though we didn't know it at the time. And I understand that some of you may be frustrated that we've been dealing with the Mimic for like 4 games until we knew about it, but that's kind of how Five Nights at Freddy's has always been. I mean, FNAF 1 through Ultimate Custom Night is the William Afton story arc, and he isn't name dropped until, and I'm not kidding you, the credits of FNAF 6. Like, we had a good idea who he was by FNAF 3, but still. So when it comes to the Mimic storyline, Help Wanted and Security Breach are our exposition and the beginning of the rising action. Help Wanted introduces the idea of the Mimic and one of our main characters, Vanessa. Security Breach introduces Gregory and Glamrock Freddy and gives us more information about Vanessa and also shows us some of the problems the Mimic is causing, which begins our rising action, showing us that whatever we're doing in this story has real-world repercussions. It's not just people getting lost in a VR game, people are dying out here. Then Ruin and Help Wanted 2 go on to show us the villains of this story arc, continuing the rising action. After all, Ruin introduces us to our 2 main villains, the Mimic, and what I believe is going to be Cassie. After all, Vanessa was turned into Vanny and made into be a villain, and I think that very same fate is likely for Cassie after what she goes through in Ruin. Help Wanted 2 then further expanding on the backstory of Cassie. And our final rising action game, Secret of the Mimic, a game that helps to explain the origins and motivations behind the Mimic just before we confront it. All of this has been slow burning to the climax of the Mimic story arc. It feels like the next time we see it, we are going to confront it and stop it. Like we're really close to the climax of this story, the FNAF 6 of the Mimic era. And all of this to say, it would be so weird to break up this pacing and storytelling to tell us more about like the FNAF 2 location. Clarifying lore from the William Afton storyline at this point of the Mimic storyline would be a total pace breaker. Maybe after the Mimic has been resolved, I could see a main story game. Maybe after the Mimic storyline has been resolved, I could see a Steel Wool produced game sometime in the William Afton era to give us more information there. But where we're at right now, it would totally break up the storytelling. So I think it's safe to assume, for the most part, that if we're talking about a sequel to a game, it would be a sequel to a modern FNAF game, something made by Steel Wool, except for one notable exception that I will bring up when it's relevant. So what game is it then? Well, the modern FNAF entries are Help Wanted 1 and 2, Security Breach, Ruin technically, and Secret of the Mimic. Straight away, Help Wanted's out. After all, it would be the 3rd game. And the only information we have about the game is that it's a 2, not a 3. So like, it'd be crazy if the only information Scott gave us is a lie. He's a troll, but that's just dickish behavior. I also don't think it's going to be a Secret of the Mimic 2, because to be honest, we just got that game. It's likely, if not probable, that we're going to get a DLC of some kind for Secret of the Mimic to expand its story, but a DLC isn't the same thing as a sequel, is it? And again, I don't think we'll get a sequel a year after the game came out, which only leaves Security Breach and Ruin, both of which I think are possible. Ruin was the most recent game in the timeline, and it ends on an extreme cliffhanger of Cassie maybe not even surviving. But if she does, she's at the whim of the Mimic. But honestly, as thrilling as that bookend is, I don't think Ruin 2 would be at the Pizzaplex. After all, remember the full title of the game, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin. If we're getting a Ruin 2, I'm pretty sure its full title would be Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic Ruin. A DLC expansion to Secret of the Mimic, but technically a Ruin 2. One that sees the facility sometime after the events of the main game, in its semi-burned down state. That would be rife for scary moments and would extend the story of the Mimic in a meaningful way, showing us what led William Afton to discovering the Mimic, maybe what he did with it once he found out. Because frankly, the next game after Ruin in the timeline, I don't think would be called Ruin. I think it would just be the next mainline game of the series. As for the name of the next mainline game of the series, well, it could be Security Breach 2. I mean, the Mimic is still down there in the basement and needs to be dealt with, and now Cassie needs to be rescued as well, at best. All of our characters have been rallied and identified. Gregory, Vanessa, and Glamrock Freddy are on the side of good, and the Mimic and possibly Cassie are on the side of evil. Now Gregory and Vanessa need to work their way into the dilapidated Pizzaplex to go and rescue Cassie. But frankly, there's a problem with this theory. We've been through this Pizzaplex twice. Can they meaningfully change the Pizzaplex in a way that makes this game still feel fresh? I mean, Ruin was literally going through a dilapidated Pizzaplex to save somebody deep inside. This would be the same thing again. Sure, there are underground areas of the Pizzaplex yet to be explored, but would the entire game take place underground? Well, if it does, we actually have another option for a sequel here. Secret of the Mimic showed us something very important, that the land that the Pizzaplex is built on is likely nearby where the FNAF 4 house was. Not only that, but there was an underground area under the Pizzaplex that connected a tunnel system to that house. In other words, I've been semi-vindicated in my theory that the scooper we see in Ruin is in some way the sister location scooper. Whether there was a hallucination, a renovation, or a recreation, this area in Ruin connects to the pizzeria under the Pizzaplex. And this area in Secret of the Mimic connects to the pizzeria under MCM. And like I've been saying, if there is a underground facility connected to elevators to the house that likely becomes the FNAF 4 house, what is that except for sister location? And if the Ruin area is the sister location bunker, well, we have one more option for a sequel, Sister Location 2. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. If we have one last rising action to get out of the way, it would be how the Mimic went from Secret of the Mimic to Ruin. There's a huge gap of time here that never gets explored. We have no idea what would have happened in between. And if we go looking for Cassie, we would end up in the old sister location ruins underneath the Pizzaplex, which would be the perfect location to learn more about William Afton and what he did with the Mimic to make it what it is today, to learn more about the creature we're going to have to take down. Besides, sister location is fairly controversial in the franchise, and it's hit or miss if people actually like it, so giving us a new sister location that's really good would be a way to help clear that name. And that's my thoughts on what this new FNAF sequel is going to be. Like I said, literally all we had was this Scott chat message. But I do think a sister location sequel is our most likely option here. Everything is pointing to going to the bunker under the Pizzaplex, and that would be the sister location bunker. Not to mention in Help Wanted 2, there was so much references and imagery to sister location, that's gotta be for a reason. But what do you think in the comments below? I just know I am excited as hell to finally have some tangible news about a mainline FNAF game by Scott and Steelwool. In the meantime, if you want to know more about the past of the Mimic, aka Fall Fest, last week I released a video all about what that is in the timeline and how we can assume Fazbear fits into it. You can find that right here. For your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share with #ToastArt. A huge thank you to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.